Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Disney. Disney only cares about one thing and will do anything for the woke agenda. Influence is their only priority. They want to make sure they can push their ideas on the world. It's a strange thing, and I understand why a creator, a writer, someone who has a certain passion would want to get the word out about what they think is important, what they think the world should be like. But it really is strange that an entire multi-billion-dollar company is completely hijacked and only does things that benefit pushing their influence and pushing their agenda. The stock price is destroyed. The cable side of Disney's business, which is a very big part of their business, is starting to fall apart. Their movies are not doing well, but their budgets for all of their major movies keep going up to a really high number. Somehow those budgets all get to around $320 million, and supposedly there are cost overruns. But then if they are overruns, why do they all wind up to be about the same number? It seems like it's a number they decided they would go up to, which makes no sense because even with a big movie, unless it's a guaranteed blockbuster, that's like $150 million more than they should spend on any single movie. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. This just came out today and I couldn't believe it because of all the things that Disney needs to focus on. This is definitely not one of them. They don't need to take ESPN and further damage the brand by having it so closely associated with something that doesn't do anything to enhance the brand for customers. There are customers that actually pay for ESPN Plus. You think they pay for ESPN Plus to get this content? Coming from Axios, Ibram X. Kendi launches ESPN Plus series on sports and race. Boston University professor and author Ibram X. Kendi has kicked off an ESPN Plus series that focuses on racism in the sports world. Is that why people go to ESPN? Is that why ESPN for decades has actually supported the entire cable bundle and the entire cable industry? Because people are so interested in hearing about Ibram X. Kendi's take on sports racism? Why does this matter? Kendi, whose best-selling books on racism and its history in America have been banned by some schools after complaints by conservatives and normal people, is jumping into streaming with The Sports Project and an upcoming Netflix documentary. This is a guy who's currently under investigation for money missing from his anti-racist center in Massachusetts. The big picture. His ESPN Plus series comes shortly after Kendi was forced to lay off several staffers, around half of them, at Boston University's Center for Anti-Racist Research, where he's a founding director. Why was he forced to lay these people off? Because they ran out of money, because it was mismanaged, but apparently there's some money missing and people are freaking out over it. In the meantime, Disney associates themselves with this guy, giving him additional credibility. The center was created shortly after George Floyd died in 2020, and its goals include creating a nationwide tracker of racial disparities. But the center has been plagued by allegations of dysfunction and mistreatment of employees. Allegations Kendi has called baseless. He should have to explain himself really clearly, because for Disney to mix up with this brand of his is not helpful to anything that Disney is trying to do, except to have influence and push the woke agenda. Zooming in, Skin in the Game with Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, which began streaming last month on ESPN Plus, follows Kendi as he interviews athletes, experts, and journalists about racism in sports. The 5-episode series tackles such topics as the mental health of Black women athletes, Latinos in baseball, and how sports journalists cover race. The series is co-produced by ESPN Plus Originals and Anscape in association with Religion of Sports and Kendi's Maroon Visions. So give him a producing deal while you're at it. The series features vignettes from notable names including W. Kamau Bell and Jameel Hill, and each episode ends with a roundtable discussion led by Kendi. This must be really something to see. The shows use footage from ESPN as participants critique sports coverage and discuss bias and other issues. So now they can judge other sports presenters, and these people on Kendi's show can police other sportscasters and see if they are anti-racist enough to please Jameel Hill and Camus Bell and, of course, Kendi. Zooming out, quote, stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You by Jason Reynolds and Kendi is one of the most banned books at schools and libraries, according to the American Library Association. Kendi is a frequent target of conservatives and normal people on social media for his commentaries on race and discrimination. Between the lines, the ESPN Plus project with Kendi shows its parent company, Disney, is not turning away from tackling topics on race and diversity, despite its battle with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who repeatedly has criticized the company's inclusion policies as woke. And as we've also noticed, Disney's stock has been destroyed because they don't regard the interests of the people that actually have supported their brands and the brands they acquired, like Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones. They only care about pushing their view of the world and have no respect for anyone else. And the result of that is a stock that has completely collapsed. If you look at Disney within the last couple of years, they were doing fantastic. March 2021, that's their height. That probably wasn't realistic at $197.16, but it's down to $79.54. Now, Disney's not going out of business. Disney is a $145 billion company today. They're not going to sell Star Wars. They're not going to sell Marvel. They're not in a downward spiral. Their stock will probably fall into the 60s. The people who are negative on Disney are saying they could see it go into the 60s. Do you think Bob Iger cares if the stock goes into the 60s? Let me tell you, no, he doesn't. Are they going to run out of money? No, they're not. They have tons of money. They have incredible amounts of money coming in from their cable business. Yes, even still after they screwed up their cable business with Charter, it was bad for them. They'll make it up with some revenue from the streaming service, but short term, yes, they're going to probably lose some money on it. But they still have so much money coming in from the theme parks. Plenty more money coming in from licensing. They do about $5 billion a year in licensing revenue from all the intellectual properties they control. They have plenty of money coming in. They're not going out of business. And that's the thing for me that is actually really frustrating about this, to look at it and say, did you really need to do this? Did you really need to take over these brands? Really recast this thing for propaganda purposes only? Not give any consideration for what Walt Disney did in the past? Nothing for what George Lucas did in the past, what Steve Jobs did with Pixar, Stan Lee's Marvel? These are incredible, important, passionate creations that didn't just come out of nowhere. It came out of a tremendous amount of effort and work. They don't care about that. They don't care about anything other than power and control and influence. And somehow these radicals got control of what now is a $145 billion company. If the stock goes down by 10%, if it goes down by 20%, it's not going to go down by a third. It's not going to be in the 20s. They have too much cash coming in for that. They also have complete control of how they report their financial results. They get sued every now and then over one thing or another, but they're a really big machine and they don't fall apart so easily. So it's incredibly frustrating to see Disney do so much damage to themselves because their only focus is pushing an agenda. Look at this. Disney sinks $300 million into over-budget Little Mermaid movie. And this wasn't even all the money they spent on it. They spent more money in post-production after this $300 million, which is to say, post-production is what it sounds like it is. After you've shot the whole movie, you're still editing it, finishing it, putting it together for marketing purposes. Of course, they're going to spend more money on marketing. They do get 25% back of what they spend in the UK. So if they spend all 300 million or 320 million, which is what they seem to like to spend on their big budget movies, they'll get back 25% of whatever they spent there. So it could be very significant, like $75 million or more back. But something is very wrong with this company. $300 million is not an appropriate amount of money to spend on a movie like this, nor would it be appropriate to spend on the Marvels. This article in Forbes covers $270 million that they're spending on the Marvels. That's also before the film was completely finished. You know how much this is going to wind up being when it's all said and done? $320 million. That's how much it was to finish Indiana Jones. $320 million. There is no way that you have wild cost overruns that are just out of control, that are all like roughly within 5% or 3% at the end. Wild cost overruns are not 3% or 5%. One could be 22% and another one might be 3%, but they can't all come in at the same number. I'm also very suspicious, if you follow my channel, I've mentioned this a number of times, of why Marvel's shows all cost $25 million each or more for Disney Plus. It's not just that the shows aren't that good. They're just outrageously, ridiculously expensive, and it doesn't make sense. I don't know if they take some of their overhead and office expenses and push those costs into the production of their films. I'm not a forensic accountant. I don't have access to all their inside numbers, but their disregard for spending money, their disregard for their stock price, their disregard for overall concern about what happens to their intellectual properties, and even their disregard over what's going on with the cable business, where they're just playing it off like it's no big deal that 8 of their 19 cable channels were dropped by Charter Spectrum. This is from Reuters. Disney Charter Spectrum deal will reshape media according to executives. From The Hollywood Reporter, in TV's Wild West, which channels will be dropped next? Disney's standoff with Charter shows that the carriage fees for core channels like ESPN may keep rising, but the padding of the bundle with channels like Freeform is now in the past. So they don't even know which channels are going to get dropped. When these channels are dropped, that means the channels aren't getting subscription revenue from the cable services, and they're not getting any advertising revenue from selling ads on the channels in those markets wherever they're dropped. What is Disney doing to address this? They're doing nothing to address this. This is an article from Vulture with an interview with Dana Walden, who's one of the top execs in their linear TV business. And her attitude is basically like, look, we're not going to do the same deals with every cable distributor. We don't know what value they see in what we have. We're not so sure if we're going to want to do a deal like we did with the Disney Plus streaming service with them. There's no guidance on this. There's no focus on this and no concern about this. As someone who's been making a lot of videos about Disney and commenting on Disney and following these stories as they come together on a daily basis, it's really shocking. It's not something I've seen with other companies and other things I've studied and followed. I understand the reaction with Bud Light, and I understand the reaction with Target better than I understand the reaction with Disney. When Disney has a problem, they just don't seem to address it, but it doesn't seem to matter as long as they figure they keep getting revenue in. They'll let the stock fall apart, the movies be unprofitable, the shows cost God knows what, but somehow it looks like a controlled chaos. And when we look at Disney and we see them losing money on this and losing money on that and in trouble with their intellectual properties, we don't understand that that doesn't matter to them. Their focus is influence. Their focus is distribution and pushing their agenda, which, if I'm right, they'll never sell the ABC network because that has tremendous influence still between ABC News and the rest of the exposure that they get on the ABC network. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.